So not too long ago, I did a clip on how to budget, how to create a budget. And I ran the example using someone who makes $5,000 post-tax income per month. And many people came to me with tears in their eyes and then said, David, sir, I don't make nearly that much money. It's easy to budget if you have a net income of $5,000 a month. What about budgeting for someone who just makes enough to cover expenses or someone whose expenses exceed their income? That's much tougher. Now, no matter how much you make, no matter if you're operating at a deficit, the experiment is more or less the same. You find out what's your post-tax income per month. You check your bank statements. You see what you spend money on. You write out your fixed versus discretionary costs, and you see where you can cut back. Now, maybe you find out you have zero money left over for entertainment, or maybe you find out you're spending $1,000 more than you're making, but at least you know the specific challenge that you're up against. And so running the experiment is still very much worthwhile. The ultimate goal is to get to a point where you are able to, number one, save. Number two, ideally greater than 15% of your income. But before we get there, we have to be sure we're at least breaking even. If we're not breaking even, that's going to very quickly become a problem. You can become delinquent on bills. You can go into debt. You start paying fees and penalties on top of the actual principal amounts that you owe. If you're not at a point where you're breaking even, make sure you're first paying for it. Again, in all these cases, you want to be going line by line, but certainly food, medicine, if applicable, rent or mortgage, and you can include housing costs in that more broadly, utilities, transportation. Now, transportation might be public transportation, or it might be a car, automobile loan, or whatever the case may be. Once you've covered these, then you focus on your other bills, probably using the avalanche method. Now, last week, we talked about the debt snowball versus the debt avalanche. The debt snowball is where you pay your smallest debts first. It's more expensive. You end up paying for what some say is a psychological benefit. You end up paying way more interest. I think reducing the amount of interest you pay is the most important. So probably the avalanche method over the debt snowball method. And then you have to figure out how to help break even. You have to see where you can cut costs. Discretionary spending needs to be limited considerably. This is not fun, but it's important to think about it as temporary until you're in a better financial position. And then those discretionary expenditures can come back. Maybe you can't go out every weekend, but you can go out every other. Maybe you can't buy new clothes every 3 months and you've got to do it every 6. Maybe you can't do the singing lessons or whatever it means, but it doesn't mean that you can't forever, and that's an important thing. Next, you want to look at your mandatory costs and see where you can cut back, if at all. Are there changes that could be made? On food, it's possible that by going to Trader Joe's rather than Whole Foods, you reduce how much you're spending. Now, I know some people will say, David, I live in a food desert. I don't have a Whole Foods or a Trader Joe's. These are just examples. Trader Joe's is significantly cheaper than Whole Foods, so maybe you look there. Maybe when it comes to medicine, there are, Mark Cuban has a pharmacy for many medications where they charge less than what other pharmacies charge. For rent or mortgage, do you need to move? Can you potentially refinance, et cetera? For utilities, are there, these are things, I did them for a very long time. What temperature, right? What degree Fahrenheit am I setting my home to in the winter or in the summer or whatever the case may be? Maybe when it comes to insurance, you can find less expensive insurance. Maybe there's something more drastic that you have to do. But through a series of changes like these, you should be able to start seeing how you can make it work. First on paper, and then applying it in real life, which can always be tough because unexpected things come up. If you're doing all of this and it's still not going to be enough, then you have to talk about increasing your income. Now, I don't want to be like glib in any way. It's super easy to say, oh, the solution is to make more. Right, but where? What if I live in a place that doesn't have jobs? Not minimizing those in any way. But at a certain point, you can only reduce spending to a certain degree. You may have to look at the income side. And then we're having difficult conversations about, do I need a second job? Is there someone else in the home who can contribute? But the important thing is to start thinking about, what would the financial picture look like if I made $5,000 more dollars? Where exactly does it go? What if I made 10,000 more, or whatever it is, and then figure out a way to get there? Could be extra hours, could be asking for a raise, could be gig work, some other kind of side hustle. And I know it's so cliche to say that. It could be looking for a new job altogether, because you determine this job is so many hours and not enough pay. The only way is to get a totally different job. I get the implications of all of this. Moving, that's hugely difficult and expensive in the short term. Changing jobs, huge upheaval. Society shouldn't be putting people in these positions to begin with, to a great degree. But having enough resources to get by and avoid high interest debt is critically important and most definitely worth the effort. And if people want to send in a specific budget and income example, I'm glad to actually work through it and do another video.